No, this is impossible. I buried you with my own hands. That's right. You did bury me. So the question is, oh almighty king of curses, why can you see me? What's up guys, I love Hunter here, and here we are to do a breakdown / discussion on what is truly going on with the king of curses and the ghost of immense strength that he buried with his own hands. We have so much to talk about in oh so little time. So let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. Heading me, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. What's up guys, that guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do happen to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact, and I quote, Sukuna is highly efficient with cursed energy. So, even with cursed energy reduced to Yuta Okotsu's level, it's possible for him to open a domain countless times, as long as he restores the burnt out curse technique. Domain expansion. At that moment, Sukuna saw a ghost of immense strength, who he had buried with his own hands. Now, of course, this has been the subject of heavy debate. Is this Gojo Satoru returned? Is this Kenshaku returned? Is this Yuta Okotsu with the 6 eyes? Is this Nobara? Is this insert character here? Is this Ui teleporting back onto the battlefield, holding up Gojo's head to throw the King of Curses off? What is it? If I had to be honest with you, in spite of me making a video talking about this hypothetically being Kenshaku, in spite of me making a video about this hypothetically being Yuta with the 6 eyes, in spite of me making a video talking about all the different possibilities that could exist, even a hypothetical Gojo that has come back properly, or is more than, well, let's just say, more than a Satoru Gojo resurrected, more so a vessel for the limitless and a puppet of Garnage. I've talked about all those things, but I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't want any of those things to happen. What I really want, and what I believe this is, ultimately, is what it seems to be. A vision. A sighting. A break. Well, I guess not necessarily psychotically, because he's still conscious. But a break. Psychologically, mentally, and spiritually in the King of Curses. Let's take a quick review over everything, and I mean everything, the King of Curses has gone through. So, in this chapter alone, we can see that he still is missing both of his right arms. His lower left arm has, well actually no, both of his left arms. I cannot read, but both of his left arms are still missing. Sliced apart by Maki Zenin. His heart is still presumably missing, based on the fact that he's still manually pumping it and that Yuji Itadori is still able to reach right into the gaping hole in his chest later on in the chapter. His lower right hand has just barely become functional. Then he proceeds to get hit numerous more times, weakening his control over Megami, and the connection between his soul and Megami's over and over and over again. He proceeds to get missile kicked, punched multiple times in the face, is shown to be bleeding from numerous different orifices, from his removed arms to his face, which honestly, I think he lost a whole lower eyeball sometime along the line. On top of that, he has to deal with the immense stress of being teleported upwards of not once, not twice, not thrice, not twice, not quintice, no, upwards of 50 times a second, meaning his brain is likely bouncing all about at every different point of creation. And top that off with the fact that Ryomen Sukuna is also getting nailed raw with a nice, hefty 8th Black Flash from his natural predator. And that natural predator doesn't just stop there. The same natural predator proceeds to tear into the gaping hole in his chest, cause him to cough up blood, and proceeds to start genuinely tweaking out at Mach 37 as he goes and tears out what could hypothetically remain of the remnants of the heart that Maki Zenin pierced with the Soul Split Katana. Something that Ryomen Sukuna, who had long since turned off his RCT a while ago, was already struggling to heal. Of course, Ryomen Sukuna is undeniably powerful, unbelievably efficient, despite, at the start of this battle, and by this battle I mean Kashimo fight, it being established that he still had Yuta Okkotsu levels of cursed energy, meaning he ran through Kashimo, Higuruma, Itadori again, Yuta Okkotsu, Maki Zenin, Miguel, LaRue, insert character here, Kusakabe. Like, he ran through so many different characters, he's still at Yuta Okkotsu levels of cursed energy. So clearly, he's nowhere near on empty, energy-wise, power source-wise, but I think it's reasonable to assume that if he's not at death's door, he's walking a fine line right now. Of course, Ryomen Sukuna is an undeniably powerful being. Of course, he knows his limitations and understands them. Of course, Megumi Fushiguro is still slumbering deep within his soul right now, and thusly is likely unable to respond or take over. Of course, we haven't even seen Megumi since his failed interaction with Yuta, and realistically, Yuta and Yuji and Rika all the way back in chapter 252, and this is chapter 260. So, of course, Ryomen Sukuna is still better off than other characters who are no longer living, but let's not pretend that Ryomen Sukuna hasn't gone through it. Very specifically, his flesh. He had his whole first health bar burned away by Gojo, and then Kashimo slurped up them last little bits of it, and he's been taking damage upon damage upon damage upon damage, actual soul damage, pseudo soul damage, and things like Yuji's punches, and also Jacob's ladder from Yuta, consistently getting his arms torn off, heart pierced, face torn apart. He's gone through it. You could definitely argue in some way, shape, or form, Ryomen Sukuna is on the verge of death. And notably, Jujutsu Kaisen sets up a very interesting pattern. Two patterns, but the primary one that we're going to talk about first is the idea of seeing something or someone that matters to you the most, or matters to you at all, when you're on the verge, or even hypothetically dying. This pattern is set up as soon, ironically enough, all the way back with Jogo. If you remember, right after the initial reveal of the Divine Flames, a certain interaction happens. Interaction that I joke about quite commonly. The idea that, ultimately, Ryomen Sukuna burned the Flame Spirit. Burned him so good that he entered the afterlife. And we see that in this afterlife, Jogo doesn't just see Hanami and Dagon, he actually speaks with them. They're all on the path and cycle of reincarnation. Their innate fears of humanity, they're going to come back, but Jogo sees them. And this isn't just something that's established for cursed spirits, because you can definitely make the argument, well, okay, Jogo's a cursed spirit. That doesn't necessarily count for humans, right? And despite his monstrous appearance, and despite what John Wary tries to say, Ryomen Sukuna isn't a curse. He's a reincarnated sorcerer. So, of course, he wouldn't follow the same rules as curses. So despite Jogo very clearly being on the verge and burning alive, slowly being reduced to a crisp, he was still able to see his friends, his family. But this pattern continues. Do you remember Nanami? Do you remember who he saw when met with the Verge? The loss of all life. It's clear Nanami, in a very similar way to Sukuna, could have hypothetically kept fighting. In fact, if it wasn't for Mahito very particularly showing up right here, say Yuji ran into him first, Nanami could have lived. Very probably. Of course, with very, very, very bad damage. I highly doubt Jogo could have been able to heal all of it, but still, it's a possibility. And who does Nanami see? Right on the verge, right as his body's about to burst into pieces, he sees Haibara. He manages to reach that connection. Unlike with Jogo's scenario, Haibara doesn't speak, he merely points to Yuji Todori. But once again, Gege's long since setting up this theme of when you're on the verge of losing everything, especially your life, you start to see things that matter to you. What mattered to Jogo was the curses, his family, the disaster curses. What mattered to Nanami was a brother he lost a long time ago in Haibara. And of course, he wouldn't see anyone else because they were still alive. And the pattern continues once again, where we see Nobara. Someone who doesn't just get to see one person, but actually gets to have an entire flashback before we ultimately see her end. But of course, right before we see her end, as she holds a hand over her eye, the same eye that's about to burst, she laughs and gets to see one of the people she cares about most. If many of the people she cared about. From Megumi to Itadori to Gojo to that thing A disgusting creature! Sorry. To Inumaki, to Maki, and all the way back to her childhood friend. She got to see them all before her brains were burst. And once again, in a similar vein to Nanami, we don't actually know. Obviously, I'm more so in the camp that she's gone, but for all my Nobara copers out there, hey, Toto came back. After not a name drop mention, and Nobara's gotten name drop mentions, so it's entirely possible, just for the safety of the plan, Nobara did come back with the 6 eyes. Hallelujah! But she fell. And when she fell, she saw people she cared for. She was on the verge. And Nita goes on to confirm later on, there's a possibility. A fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a chance that she's still alive. Meaning she could have hypothetically survived in spite of meeting her end, seeing those people, just like Sukuna. And that's 2 cases of humans back to back, not just cases of curses. But once again, the pattern continues, but continues in a very interesting way. I've already talked about the idea that people in the Jujutsu Kaisen universe can start to see things, see those who matter most to them. But that isn't just the case for sorcerers and curses. It's the case for Ryomen Sukuna as well, but he actually is an extra special case, because he can sort of wander into that realm, the realm of the afterlife, the innate domains of others, that place where sleep and death touch. He can reach there. We see this very specifically, originally, actually, not just here, but all the way back with our first example, with Jogo. If you remember, Sukuna breached into this reality with him. How? We don't really know. Sukuna just seems to have this innate understanding of curses down to the point where he can even interact with a realm where they go beyond. He communicates with Jogo, actually ends up giving him closure. This connection to the afterlife for Sukuna has been something long established. And of course, we know Sukuna has a deep, intimate understanding of souls and how they interact, to the point where he can heal his soul after being sliced by souls with a katana. He autonomously could split his soul off into fingers after Kenjaku taught him over 1,000 years ago. Sukuna is a prodigy who's always had connection to death in the afterlife. He's always been there, to the point where the only character who he doesn't immediately activate in the afterlife with, or interact with when he himself has specifically slain them, is Mahoraga, Yorozu, and Satoru Gojo. Yorozu makes sense in the sense that, well, she kind of got her closure by simply falling to Sukuna, thusly Sukuna had no reason to discuss with her. Mahoraga makes sense because it didn't necessarily, like, die, like, it's not a person, it's a Shikigami, not even a curse, it doesn't have any sentience, it has pseudo-sentience, though. I give Mahoraga a little bit of character, but clearly, it wasn't going to have a yap session with Sukuna. And finally, Satoru Gojo, but Jogo here has the conversation with Sukuna, where Sukuna gives him closure, showing that Sukuna can interact with that afterlife. We see the pattern we see the pattern with Kashimo, established once again, where Sukuna is able to connect with him and communicate with him, in an honestly even more in-depth way than he did with Jogo, to where after he sends Kashimo to the great big waffle iron in the sky, he meets with Kashimo in this beautiful land, walks in an entirely different and completely composed outfit, entirely unharmed, and they have a genuine discussion, further developing Sukuna's ideology and giving Kashimo once again that sense of closure. Kashimo also got to see what he cared about most, just like Jogo got to see what he cared about most, and what both of those two cared about at that moment was Sukuna. And Sukuna was able to interact with and commune with them on that spiritual level. Gege has established that Sukuna has some sort of connection to the realm beyond. And once again, if we go with the idea that people on the verge can see those who they care about most, look at Gojo Satoru and this airport scene. He sees Suguru Geto, he sees Nanami, he sees Haibara. We even get to see hypothetical cameos of Yaga, Riko, I forget her name, Tochi, all the people that Gojo cares about in his core, all the people who have affected him, he sees them all while on the verge. Notes, he's gone, and Sukuna doesn't go to interact with him, but we know he hasn't fallen, because he smiles at Sukuna's words. You can be on the verge, and still interact with those beyond. So, what does this mean? Does that mean that Ryomen Sukuna, after dealing with all he's dealt with, is now starting to see it. Now starting to fade in between those two lines. Starting to fall away from this reality into the reality of the afterlife? Possibly. And here's the thing, right? We know that you can be in dire straits and still have a lot of fight left in you, or just outright survive. We see Yuta Okkotsu get split in half by a strong dismantle. I don't think it was a World Slash just because of the requirements for World Slash that we find out later, but we see him get split in half. But apparently, he was still more than sentient enough to actively control the shutdown of his domain, set it up, and bait Sukuna. All while being actually cut in half. And as much as I love Yuta Okkotsu, to imply that he's more durable or more survivable than Ryomen Sukuna would be a fool's errand, I will readily admit. So, naturally, this leads to the beginning. The origin point of it all. What is this? What is this immense ghost? This ghost of immense strength, who was buried by Satoru Gojo. That's an absolute lie. Who was buried by Ryomen Sukuna. Who is this immense ghost? Well, it's just that. At least in my opinion, Sukuna's grasp on reality slowly but surely is starting to fade. Bit by bit. Remember, he's having his heart torn out after it was already stabbed, and he's had numerous amounts of different types of soul damage, or not necessarily soul damage, soul boundary damage, and then actual soul damage done to him. And remember, he may or may not still be suffering from genuine brain damage. Sure, through his binding vows and manipulation of his domain, he was able to summon it back through the sparks of black, but we don't actually know if his unlimited void brain damage healed. And remember, he even admits, hey, casting multiple domain expansions back to back to back using the RCT refresh isn't the best thing to do. He was doing that. Not to the same degree that Gojo was. Gojo casted upwards of 5 while he only casted 3, but Sukuna's been doing a lot to his brain. Sukuna's been doing a lot this day. From taking damage to dealing it out to activating techniques to binding vow. A lot of that has been happening to Sukuna. So I wouldn't be shocked, even with his insane efficiency, his new levels of cursed energy, or at least the levels of confirmation that we have them being at. With all this, I would not be shocked if it's starting to catch up to him. Do I think that Gojo could come back and one-shot Sukuna? Possibly. But do I also believe that Sukuna could just keel over next chapter? Probably not. Don't get me wrong. I still think Sukuna has a lot of fight left in him. The fact that he was ready to drop another domain expansion, and the fact that not Sukuna, but the narrator 100% admits that he could expand his domain countless more times. I believe in the TCBs, it's like infinite more times, endlessly. He could endlessly cast domain. Sukuna still definitely has fight in him. But still, I think what's just happening here is that all of today's events are finally catching up. And Sukuna is starting to walk that barrier, and thusly he's seeing the person that affected him most. Don't get me wrong, Sukuna makes a very interesting and very beloved statement for us Maki meat munchers. He mentions that Maki's the only person he had to really prove himself against, which definitely downplayed the significance of Satoru Gojo in his mind, because that essentially, by making that statement, Sukuna's like, hey, even your precious Gojo sensei didn't really give me too much to prove. All it is you, Maki, as you stand as a direct contradiction to my very nature as a sorcerer. But, in stark contrast to that, and in spite of what Urume says at the end of 252, it's clear from all the times in the fight where Sukuna started to think back on the love that he felt. From 236 confirming in Sukuna's own mind that Satoru Gojo was magnificent, and he shall never forget him as long as he lives. Sukuna was affected. Despite standing unrivaled at the peak of that mountain, there was well, you can definitely argue there were many men at this point, but there was one total man. One individual who forced him to evolve, forced him to get better, forced him to take a body and a technique that he had never encountered before and use it better than any of its previous users, all to overcome the ability of one man. One Kit Kat bar. And that Kit Kat bar's name is Satoru Gojo. So in the end, who would appear for Ryomen Sukuna? It wouldn't be his brother, who he consumed way back when, over 1,000 years ago. It wouldn't be Kenshaku, who Sukuna may not even truly care about at all as any more than a means to evolution or further pseudo-immortality through the manipulation of the soul. It wouldn't be Rozu, it wouldn't be Orame, it wouldn't be anyone. If there was going to be anyone that Ryomen Sukuna was going to see on the verge of losing his very life, of course it would be that ghost of immense strength. The one person who crossed that infinite distance to reach and touch the heart of, to show love to the King of Curses, to truly make him feel fear for the first time in a millennium. That's the person that Ryomen Sukuna would see. The person who already walks that fine line between life and death. It would be the ghost he buried with his own hands that would spark and catch his attention. Of course it would. Especially considering you can see how much Gojo's affected him by the very hand sign he uses. It's not just out of desperation, it's out of utility. And in a twisted way, Sukuna uses this hand sign out of respect for Gojo Satoru. At least in my opinion. And you may be wondering, okay, Pencil Man, you say all this, and fine, whatever. Sukuna does wander into the afterlife every once in a while. Sure, people do start to see the people they care about most on the verge, and obviously, Gojo would be the one person that Sukuna would see, considering Sukuna's lack of connection to anybody else. But you still need to justify one thing. Why? Why just the ghost? Why not bring back Satoru Gojo? Why not just have him return? There are multiple hints at it. From the numerous ways of the ideas of sacrificing the eye, to Utsuhime's technique, to Shoko being able to resurrect him, to the different ideas of even this maybe not being Satoru Gojo. Maybe it's Yuno with the 6 eyes, or Nobara with the 6 eyes, or the 6 eyes with the 6 eyes, or it's a Pharaoh Gojo. Anything. Why not just have it be Gojo, Pencilman? What is your obsession with this just being a ghost to the point where you would call numerous previous videos you made stretches and things you didn't really want to happen? Well, I'll be honest with you, because at the end of the day, as much as I love Gojo, as much as I love Gojo and Sukuna's dynamic, and as much as I love the fact that Sukuna's heart was not just being touched and torn at by Yuji Itadori, but it's ironically enough because of that very same boy, Yuji Itadori. I love Satoru Gojo. If you couldn't tell, I was, and still am, a massive Gojo glazer. I personally believe the ideological battle between Gojo and Sukuna is still raging on to this very day. This very moment. Until this man falls, the battle's going to keep going on. And by this man, I could be Itadori, it could be Sukuna. No matter what, the battle's still going on in my mind. But ultimately, as much as I love Gojo and Sukuna's dynamic, Gojo's not the main character. He never was, and he never will be. And in that same vein, Sukuna was never really Gojo's villain. He never was, and he never would be. He was Itadori's villain. He was the person who brought the depths of madness out of Itadori. He's the person who has Itadori Yuji, a man who, within a year's time past, wouldn't know a king from a curse, is now currently reaching into the depths of that very King of Curses' chest and tearing out his heart. The same boy who was awoken to the level of the gods, all because of the motivation provided by Ryomen Sukuna. The dynamic between Yuji and Sukuna is something that has to exist between them. The conclusion of this battle has to exist between them. Everything this battle has been building to, from its different conflicts, Sukuna's different awakenings and counterbalances, all of that has come at the cost and has come to overcome and bring us to the point of the battle between Yuji Itadori and Ryomen Sukuna. That's why I just want it to be a vision. That's why I just want it to be Sukuna seeing the one person who managed to teach him even a tiny bit about love. That's why I simply want this ghost of immense strength to be just that. A ghost. A vision of a man who's losing his mind, body, and soul to the boy who he stole it all away from. That's what I want. I want these two men, Ryomen Sukuna and Yuji Itadori, the King of Curses and the King's Empty Vessel, the uncle and the nephew, the father and the son. I want these two to conclude their battle. If Gojo comes back, will I be angry? No. In fact, I'll do a little hop and a jig. In fact, if Gojo comes back properly, I will wear a suit in the next review. For those, for the patrons and members, if y'all remember way back when 221 first dropped, I wore a suit in the live reaction. But with that being the case, I won't wear a suit if the bro comes back. You know, I'm a Gojo Glazer to the day I go. But ultimately, as much as a Gojo Glazer as I am, as much as a Sukuna slopper as I am, this is the only piece of JJK merch I own. Literally, Sukuna slopper to the day I go. I am, at my core, take away everything else that I am, I'm an Itadori investor. All my stocks go into that young man. I have faith in Iji. I don't want Gojo to come back and override him. To make all of his efforts just be a stepping stone to Satoru Gojo. Gojo's done enough. Burned through the entire first health bar. Did lasting damage, and in a way, is still helping beyond the grave. Hey, from what it looks like, if the page order is meant to go by what the officials were going by, and this is the second to last page, and this is actually the final page, this ghost simply appearing stopped Sukuna from properly activating his domain expansion in spite of him possibly saying it. This could have saved Yuji from a terrible, terrible fate, and that's okay. Because at the end, it's still Yuji. It's still the boy who was cursed from birth to fight with, to contain, and to override the King of Curses. And in my opinion, that's what matters most. Yuji's lost a lot to Sukuna. From his friends, to his family, to his brothers, he's lost quite a lot. And of course, Gojo Satoru has lost a lot too. But that was to other means. That was to other fates. That was to other men. If there's anybody who deserves to strike down the King of Curses, it is not the strongest sorcerer of today, but rather it should be the strongest sorcerer of tomorrow, Yuji Itadori. However, that's what I think. Please tell me what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you want this vision of Gojo to not just be a vision? Do you want it to be the king of today brought back in all his juicy, glorious, blue-eyed, heavenly light? Or do you want this just to be an assist from beyond the grave, coming from a man who's slowly losing everything, including his mind, body, and heart? Please let me know in the comment section down below. But if you went all the way to the end of this video, please do me a favor and leave Hollow Soul. Leave Hollow Soul in the comment section down below. I'd like to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that little notification bell so you not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have to have a Patreon below, or you can support me for as low as $1 a month to get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. And so now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks include the live reaction to the very next chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen, ad free variations of all my videos, and if you become a $25 patron or a $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. Now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with a Pencil. Right. Oh, also. Do have the Ko-Fi link down below. 5 beans for a short video, 25 beans for a long video. Any donation at all is always appreciated. But now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with a Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members: O'Connor Plays, Greyhound, At Kids Void, Astro, Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, King Sukuna, NMA, Real Rare, Paris Arnold, and G Prosper. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 members: Super Gamer Q, Steron, Sean, Sammy, Oexian, Midnight Lord 21, Kevin Encarnacion, Josh Brown, and A+A. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $7 member, Autumn Mornings Lazo. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $10 members, Robbie Uchiha and Jay Warrior. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $10 patrons, Joaquin Munoz, and Idem Okami. And I'd like to give a final gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.